What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. This is the second part in a two-part rundown of the USA Parkour Cup. Originally, I was going to do one episode about the state of parkour competition in 2020. That episode's still going to be coming, but this just kind of transformed into something else. So if you're listening to this, make sure you also go listen to the first episode where some of the athletes talk about their experience at the competition. I think it's really insightful. But in this episode, I'm sitting down with Robbie Corbett, who is the kind of showrunner of all of the WFPF competitions. So he was really in charge of the whole event. And we get to hear his kind of side of everything as far as how the event is run, a lot of the format of the competition, and everything that's kind of surrounding the whole event. I think it's all really interesting. This was supposed to originally be a video episode. Did I fuck up the video really bad? Yes. Is the audio get really bad at the end because I fucked that up too? Yes. But I still think it's a really good episode, so I hope you enjoy. And I'm still obviously learning all of this stuff, and I'm really bad at it. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy. Peace. Thanks for joining me today, Robbie. I know that let's just start. I just want you to kind of start with just like who you are, in case, people might not know who you are at this point. Just because I feel like a lot of what you're doing is kind of behind the scenes. And so I feel like some of the younger crowd might not know who you are right now. So if you just kind of explain who you are, what you're doing.
Yeah, for me, I'll just stick to parkour because I think that's the point we're talking about. So what I've done with parkour. Yeah. I'm a 33-year-old practitioner. I started when I was very young in a small town in Florida, just doing it naturally. There wasn't gymnastics or anything like that for me to take, so I was kind of like a street skater first, and then I got into wrestling, and then I decided to be the first and only male cheerleader at my high schools, and they kind of taught me acrobatics on top of just always playing like tag with friends or manhunt or things like that, and just really being stoked on being evasive and things like that. When I was about 19, saw the trailers for a movie called District B13, drove to go see that, changed my, went online after, was like, what is parkour? And started looking more into it, and found out that it was really getting big in Hollywood and in film. I've always been a big lover of cinema. I see countless movies, everything like that. So I decided to move to LA in 2008 to try to do parkour in the film industry. From that, I've done stunts, Guinness World Record, America's Got Talent finalist, worked on MTV's Ultimate Parkour Challenge, which eventually got me to meet the owners of the WFPF. That, I helped judge that whole season, where we kept changing the competitive gameplay every single episode, so the judges had to find different gameplays as well as the athletes, and it was a really cool experience. Once that wrapped up, WFPF approached me about doing a certification, and by that point I taught gymnastics, personal training, and stunts for probably about 10 years. Not 10 years yet. Probably at that point, 2008, probably about 5 years. So that's how I started to get more involved with WFPF after the MTV show. The certification's been recognized in like 6 different countries. We have over 1,000 certified instructors around the world. While at the same time, we just kept trying to talk about how competitions could keep growing since the MTV show. I competed in the first American Art of Motion in Tampa, and then I judged the second. From there, it just kept growing into the competition side of things as well, while I've slowly now gotten more out of stunts in film and television and segued more as a co-owner of the World Freerunning Parkour Federation, where I mainly oversee competitions, certifications, and equipment.
Okay, cool. Nice. That's awesome. So let's kind of jump into kind of the main thing, which is we're mostly discussing the recent USA Parkour Cup. And can you just give me a little bit of history on the event? Like, why does it exist? Like, how long has it been around? What's the goal of it? Like, et cetera.
Yeah, for the USA Parkour Cup. So USA Parkour was started mainly as an entity to look over the insurance side of things and curriculum side of things to legitimize the sport for an insurance perspective, so they could come and businesses could get insurance to teach it safely, as well as host competitions that would be covered. So that's how that all started about 6 years ago, but the USA Parkour. And since that, it's become more of a governing body type looking out for the sport, since there isn't one for USA, or at least at that point there wasn't, so that would have been the first. Second, how the competition kind of came was, at first it was just starting in gyms that had the insurance and the curriculum and stuff like that, and obviously they were winning, and it was like, cool, so now that we've got enough of these gyms, how do we, create the national? So those are all the regionals, state, locals, things like that. And what are they striving for? So that's where the national idea came from, which took probably 2 years to really develop enough of, practitioners and understanding from the gym owners and the students and all that stuff to really get that going. Right before that, we started in Vegas, what's called the Vegas Jump Off, which was our international competition, where we did 2 of those. We did that in 2016 and 2017. And then we were looking to keep that the international, and we were going to start this national in Tampa, Florida, where a second venue was opening up. At that time, when we were looking to segue and have this national in 2018, and our international in Vegas in 2018, at the Mandalay Bay, there was a terrorist attack, not during our event or anything like that, but it happened and it made Mandalay Bay, shut down probably 80% of the events that they were hosting for the foreseeable future. When we were doing that, we were working with another group that was also doing air track competitions, tricking competitions, cheerleading competitions. So we were just part of the mix of these rebel sports, that were kind of banding together to, so the crowds mixed, the athletes mixed, and everybody would start to feel, the benefits of doing all those things. None of those were sanctioned by any major governing body. We were all kind of like the, newer rebel sports. But since the terrorist thing happened, and we got that venue closed down, we had to think fast, and we ended up instead comboing on the first one, the World Parkour Championship, with the USA Parkour Cup, which we just titled as an Open. So the idea was, at the same time, we had international athletes coming in. They could win the event, but at the same time, whoever was the top American ranking competitor, they would win the USA Parkour Cup. So that's what we had to do the first year, and then we were able to move out of that and do the WPC, the World Parkour Championship, on its own for the second time, which was in Mardin, Turkey in 2018. And in 2019, we were able to just make the cup at its second annual time, just the cup. And we've done that now since, to up until now. So it's just, as it stands now, it's just the USA Parkour Cup. And it's people that have won qualifiers or residents of the U.S. strictly competing for that title.
Okay. And the actual USA Parkour Cup, as we're seeing it now, was last year and this year. Is that correct?
On its own, yes, was 2 years,
yeah.
But technically we did it the first year as well, but it was just a collaboration competition. Now it's its own sanctioned 100% that.
Okay, totally. That makes a lot of sense. It's all stuff that I'm not aware of.
Well, it's tough to build and it's, it's not, a lot of people don't ask these questions, and when we do it, it's like, and I'm just going to be the first to say it, I'm not good at just talking about openly just to everybody what I'm doing. I more look for the people that will help do the next thing that we want to do, less really talking about the things that we've done, just because it takes a lot of time to do these things and a lot of energy. And me speaking just for as one of the main showrunner of it all and one of the owners of it all, is just I don't have a super lot of time to just sit down and do 2-hour talks a day with somebody just to catch them up on that. And I'm not saying I don't want to do that someday, but right now it's more about before the thing's even finished, I'm already thinking about what the next step is, and I'm just going that way. So that's kind of why. Okay,
yeah, totally. Let's kind of jump into this year's competition. I'm just gonna kind of come at it from where, as someone who was just online, never knew a whole lot about the comp. As soon as the comp ended, there was a lot of kind of I started seeing posts popping up about the competition, and it felt like the overarching theme was confusion on formatting. And could you kind of run me down on what the format of the competition was, both the speed and style, and kind of as if I was gonna, compete, because I feel pretty not in the dark. Not saying that anyone was like hiding anything from me. I'm just not ignorant, I guess, to how it worked and the formatting and everything.
No, absolutely, it's totally fine. So I mean, one, it could be very tough for somebody who didn't follow the season, i.e., go to or pay attention or go to any of the 12 qualifiers we had. So to not, if you partook in that, you win your space in the national. Either if you take first place, you get automatically in the freestyle finals. Second, third get discounts in their space reserved for the on-site qualifier. And that's for freestyle and speed, and that's the 3 age groups that we have the time for in that weekend, which is the 9 to 11, the 12 to 15, 16 plus.
Right.
And that's for speed and freestyle.
And the discounts, are you talking about like entry fees and whatnot?
Yeah, entry fees to it. Yeah. So if you took like first place at a qualifier, you get free entry and you're automatically in the finals at the qualifier or at the national. So so that's it. The gameplays were the same at the qualifiers as at the National Cup. It's speed. We do penalties first and then the fastest combined time after that, meaning we generally recommend, obviously, a gym based on how much time they have at a qualifier. They can just do 1 speed run if they wish. We normally recommend that they do 2 so that people get to run through the speed course once. They either, they collect their penalties and their time, then they get a second go, and then you push those together so it's the least amount of penalties with the fastest combined time is the winner.
So let me get this straight if I'm correct. So this first speed it's 2 runs, and let's just talk about the cup, and because it sounds like the qualifiers, could have a little bit of variation depending on that. But
at the cup, we have the speed course set up. The course was shown 2 weeks before with images kind of mapping you through the 3D world of what to expect, and obviously it's subject to change, but it was very close. And the idea is we do tape markings. We have 2 white pieces of tape for lanes throughout the course, and you must stay within those lanes as you travel over the obstacles in the path.
Right. Okay, so like basically the whole course, you have to like your body has to stay within the lane.
It's just at the obstacles. If you go past an obstacle and you overshoot and you run further than somebody else and have to cut back to the second obstacle, that's on you for your own control. It's not the whole course. It's just how you're supposed to travel over set obstacles.
More so a checkpoint.
Yeah. More of a checkpoint. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then we have yellow tape on the course, which is do not touch. So like certain spots, like floor is lava, or you just can't touch this certain thing or use this to your advantage to get there. Because some things have to be built for structure in certain ways that somebody would think, oh, I can go use that to find a loophole around this. So we just have to use the yellow tape to make sure it's like kind of a fair track as best as possible.
And can you just like walk through the penalty system real quick?
The penalty is basically if you go outside of the white lines with your, if you step out of the white line or cross over the obstacle outside of the white line, you get a penalty for it. And then if you touch the yellow in the certain areas, like physically touching it, you get a penalty. The people at the end with the least amount of penalties will automatically be ranked above people with time because they technically did the course in the most efficient, correct way that it was designed to be ran.
Gotcha. Okay. And how did you feel? Was it a penalty system last year as well?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And do you feel like that's been an effective way to like format that?
Yes. And the reason for that is we used to do just instead of penalties, we did deductions, and we would just or additions. We would add on time. So it'd be like, oh, you just if you didn't use this way of not touching the floor and you just ran across the floor, we're just going to add 30 seconds to your time. Or we're going to add, if you did something else wrong, you just get added 5 seconds. But then we found out, that some people would just run straight through and get all these additions and still beat people that took their time to do it properly.
Right.
So we kind of looked at it like similar other sports to where it's like maybe instead of just adding time, it's just we want you to also just slow down and do it correctly and safely the best way you know how, instead of just skipping things altogether and just being like, I'm just going to get time on this and I'm still going to beat people. So that's kind of why we decided to steer away from the time addition penalty, because it was also tough to really regulate well, how much time did this really save that person? Because if they really aren't good at wall climbs and they just ran around it, that could have, who knows if they ever would even got up the wall. So how can we even say 30 seconds is fair? How can we just say they're, they're just voided, they're just out, So that's where we decided to go more of the penalties.
Okay, interesting. And so, like, in the results of everything, did you feel like most people ended up with penalties, or were athletes more cautious in that scenario and like would
it's a little bit of both. I mean, I'd have to look it up, which all the score sheets are up online for anybody to see. So I'm not looking at them now because I'm trying to, I'm using my computer for this and I'm using my phone to record, or, I'd bring that up. But all the score sheets are up on our Instagram and for the WFPF and the USA Parkour, and the judges are tagged in it even too, so you could ask the judge if you think there's an accuracy, stuff like that. I think it helps promote safety a lot more. It makes people be just a little bit more cautious of doing it, staying their head in the game instead of thinking 3 steps ahead maybe. And then also I think it just makes it a lot more fair in the sense of accurately judging, to where it's since we don't have the budget or location to literally say it's this obvious, just go there, because you can't go left or right, or you can't do that, until we get to that place of a course, which I hope to one day, don't get me wrong. I think we need the penalties when it's in this more open environment. But I think also the penalties help, which the tricky part for us right now is it's still technically open competition, because one, we want more people to participate, and we don't have qualifiers in all 50 states. And then two, we need a certain amount of money for these things to be profitable, to where it actually makes sense for USA Parkour to be able to do them. So we'll have people come in that have never qualified. They can come in and buy a ticket. It's going to be more expensive, obviously, but they can. And then we're also going to have people that, these courses aren't that challenging for them, because we at the national level, there's only that qualifier in the national. At the World Parkour Championship, it gets a lot harder. So I feel. So the idea, though, on a national is still to be able to push everybody. So you're not just pushing the newer, less skilled people, bottom 30%. You're not just pushing the center 30% that are good, and you're also, though, trying to push that top 30%, which is the ones that actually, are pushing the sport to grow to new heights. So that's what we try to do with the speed as much as possible, is make sure everybody's getting pushed to some degree and still allowed to participate. So they all, the newer people get to participate with the OGs. The top 1% also is participating with, the lower percent, and everybody still gets to run the course. And then it's really up to you to be able to stay in the lines.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. How about because it's speed and style, right?
And sickest tricks.
Is that a completely separate category?
Yes.
So it's like a third format.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about that? Which one do you want to talk about?
Let's start with style, just because it's familiar, and then we can move to that.
Yeah. So freestyle, we're on a separate course than the speed. There is a qualifier for that at the national. There's the Alive After 5, and that's just because we have lots of people, like I said, just kind of coming the day before and signing up, not pre-registering or qualifying to get there. And the idea with that, 5 people start on the course. They get 3 minutes to throw down as best as they can and try to, own the stage, basically, with being equally judged on versatility, execution, difficulty, creativity, and just overall difficulty as far as it could be concerned. There is a little bit of that also, stage presence more in that, of knowing, how to keep people's attention, when to actually go through a line and not, and you have to look left and right for other people doing their stuff. So it's a little bit more chaotic, and the reason for that is just to really kind of, make sure they're pushed through effectively to get them to that freestyle finals, to then hang with the people that won the qualifiers.
Right. Can you break down the judging formatting a little bit? I think the main thing is that it might be foreign to some people is like the versatility factor and how that works and what that entails?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll do all 4 categories if that's cool. So basically, first thing you're judged on is flow. It's how well you move into your skills. Then difficulty, which is your takeoff and what you do in the air, how difficult that may be, i.e., just a single flip. You might be in the more 1 to 2 point range of difficulty, and then if you add a twist, it might be added now into like the 3 and 4 category of difficulty. After that, it's how well you land, which is execution, and then you would flow again into your next skill. So those are those 3 kind of points. The 4th one is versatility, which is how well you effectively use the 5 key events / apparatuses on the course: bars, wall, vault, floor, drop. And those each can get a 2-point max for the level that you use them in the sense of the difficulty of the skills at that apparatus. And that's mainly to make sure people are just a little bit more well-rounded, or it's trickier for an athlete to accentuate their positives and just eliminate showing their negatives. It kind of makes it a little bit more obvious that this is what they're good at, not so much here, And just so you know, all those things work on a 10-point scale. So all four, flow, execution, difficulty, and versatility. So the idea is execution and flow, you start at a perfect 10, and as you have minor mistakes or big mistakes, you get deducted. The difficulty starts at 0, and it's based on your 4 biggest tricks that it's voted down to in that to see what category you kind of fall into in the rankings of 0 to 10. And then for versatility, it's each apparatus, you can get 2 points max at each one.
Okay, gotcha. With the versatility score, do you, and I'm just not sure because I haven't seen a lot of the runs.
That's okay, yeah.
Do you feel like since like you kind of like to score the best you have to hit like A, B, C, D, E, do you feel like that might have a kind of like limiting effect on how different the runs are, or do you think that adds to like the variation in people's runs, or how do you feel like that affects the viewership of the competition?
I mean, there's a few different things there that you're asking me, so
yeah, it was a lot.
So there's a few things. One, the curriculum is for the fairest way to judge, the most quantifiable, least biased judging. So that's why that was kind of put in place. We actually used to do creativity because that was the kind of way to go. Everybody had creativity, and we kept running into problems with judging that fairly because it really depended on who the judge was at that moment to say, oh, that was creative, I haven't seen that before. Oh, that's not creative, that's just a progression, you didn't actually do the trick. Or then being like, well, I'm a breakdancer, so that's not even, and a breakdancer, we had one time, he more like he's grassrooted in breakdancing, not saying he wasn't a parkour guy, but he just like, I don't really even think that should be considered, parkour freestyle, because that guy just spun in windmills for way too long, in my opinion, and almost like can be a breather, it was just very different, because then some people were doing flags and they're like, oh, that's creative, and then some people were like, well, that you can just take a break if you know how to flag really well and you're getting a breather. That's the same to us as just clapping for the crowd, shouldn't that take away from flow, so we were trying to find a way, we just never felt that we really nailed creativity in an unbiased way. We thought, flow, execution, difficulty, there's a really good criteria for those 3. We're really having trouble with this creativity, and we were also thinking at the same time, hearing from the community like, wait, that guy won, he didn't even do anything using a wall, or he just drop and he won. And if it was just a drop contest, but he didn't use bars, he didn't use any vault apparatuses, he didn't touch so many things on the course, we would hear stuff like that. So the all the judges every time, we'd bring them together and just be like, so what do you think was like the hardest to quantifiably judge in the most fair way? And it just kept coming down to creativity was really biased, and we were missing this thing of versatility of like, well, how do we get them all to somewhat show that they're well-rounded without obviously taking away from their performance? And the way that I think the criteria helps keep the performance is it's not just the criteria, it's the course. To me, designing the course is what matters the most in the sense of being able to make the runs look individualistic. You can't just put all the bars in the center and then just, the vaults over there and the drop over there, because then in all honesty, it's going to look similar. And for me, some of the coolest looking courses that I've seen, just visually, like you look at it, you're like, that's dope, had almost the most similar runs, and I don't want to call it any of the competitions, but there was one, where they had this similar setup every single year, and the runs look pretty similar every single year. It was like, okay, everybody's pretty much started on the top right, and they're just working their way down, and then they're down at the ground floor, and they're clapping. So to me, it wasn't necessarily the criteria that was the problem for that too. It was the course setting up. So I think those have to accentuate each other. The more unique course you design and set up, the more whatever your criteria is going to be, it'll help accentuate it and bring it out.
Yeah, I guess. I think that was mainly my thought on that. I think you hit that pretty well, is that like if the course is designed in a way, there's one place to do a vault, then like everyone has to, go through that one spot, and then everyone's doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So I guess that is initially what clicked in my mind, is like that could be a downfall of that type of scoring, but it does really come down to how the course is designed.
Yeah, and for us, it's like setting walls up near the bars, it's setting drops up near the bars, it's setting different styles of walls on all sides, so it's like more slanted, less slanted. And then the idea is they get to collaborate those things to where certain things could almost blend, to where it's like, okay, so you did that lache to cat, that could be, it helps the athlete, because then the judge could say, I'll give them a half a point on wall there because they didn't do any wall skills. So technically that's like a gray zone, so we can use that to help them and make it to where it is more efficient, to where it's not hopefully so like, all right, there's the bar trick, there's the vault trick, there's the drop trick, there's the wall trick, and there's the floor trick. Congratulations, like you win. We don't really want it to be that way either. I'm not saying somebody couldn't maybe play that game and get flawless execution and flow in between that. They probably could, probably have. So it's still, there's still going to be evolving growth to it. But right now, we think this is the best for people to watch, for the athletes to really have to grow in all levels, and then also for the most or the least unbiased judging.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can understand the goal of making sure that event to event it's as consistent as possible.
Cool. And it's something similar too. I try to say to people like free running, it's almost like, and I'm not saying this is identical, but you could look at baseball and it's pretty obvious. It's like, oh, if you hit the you hit the ball, you run the bases, you win. But there's a lot more rules to that. Same with basketball. You just get the ball in the hoop and you win. It's that obvious. But there's a lot more rules to that, and it's the same for any other sport. I've watched tricking competitions where people sit there and they're like, that guy should win, and it's like, well, that's funny because you don't know the basics. Is the kicks? That guy just did flips and twists. He didn't do the kicks. Tricking, the fundamental is kicks. So your kicks is what's judged first before the flip. So it's like there's always like, I think a lot of people just want a simple, paint by numbers of like, I'm watching this and I should just know who won. And I don't really know any sport that's that simple, that's not literally, like you could quantify, and we could say that too. Hey, the people that does the most flips and twists on the most things is the winner. I could say it that way. If I wanted to just make it, point blank as simple as I wanted. And, there is that way to say it. So...
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to water down, any sport pretty hard, but, they all have a lot of complexity to them.
Yeah. And, as far as, like, talking about, like, judging, I'm a big mixed martial arts fan, huge one. And it seems every single time there's a fight, there's always, if there's not a knockout or a submission, there's always somebody online being like, I thought this guy won. Oh, I thought this guy won. That's been going on for 10 years. And there's even times where they, complain and say like, I thought that guy was winning until he got knocked out. They should do a rematch. And it's like, well, how could you say you thought that guy was winning until he got knocked out? It's like, I was winning the baseball game until the other team got more points than us. Or what do you...
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that online bitching. It's just always going to be there, and we're not just going to stop and say, hey, this is done. We're judging perfect. Here's the criteria. It's never going to evolve. So just in the the few years of being 2009 MTV show, to the Red Bull Art of Motions, to the first collegiate college parkour competition that we hosted in the USA, to Vegas, to the second Vegas, to all these, the criteria has evolved and listened and grown, but athletes get to grow so fast too. We only get like a handful of opportunities to get all these judges together and judge a comp and then reflect, where the athletes just every single day, man, are just growing and killing it. So it's tough, it's like this given, everybody's evolving, which is good, but it's hard to say. It's, there's gonna be times where it's like it meets and it's perfect, and then there's gonna be times where it's not, and then it's gonna meet and it's perfect, and that's just kind of how I feel life works.
Yeah, and I mean, with the youth of our sport, I think that growth curve will eventually start to flatten out, where like there, after a while, there will be slower advancements in both the sport competitively as well as the athletes themselves, and I think we'll eventually hit a more consistent formatting and competition criteria, etc., where it seems to make the most sense. Will you run through the big trick or the sickest trick category real quick?
Yeah, so sickest tricks, we started this year as its own separate entity. It used to be somewhat, we had dopest trick or sickest trick part of the freestyle, but then we'd get, similar. We'd get, for every one person that says this thing's awesome loudly, there's always 8 to 5 people that just come to us privately and just say, hey, we really don't think this is that great, so we always try to juggle that, and it seemed like the fairness for the sickest trick was not to put it in the freestyle finals, because we felt the freestyles, you want to not think of one trick. It's not about that at all. It's about this 45-second or 90-second beginning to end just performance. It all has to be like one. If you're noticing tick 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 tick, then in my opinion, the flow is going to start whatever, and or the execution's off because you're landing and it's pausing too much. So the idea was to maybe not try to have that there, where it's also like we're rewarding that too. You can just go in and do one trick, and you're almost taking up the stage of somebody else. Because as we get more, we're having to, we're gonna have to turn people away. So if your goal, in our opinion, isn't to be there and do this full run performance, we should give you your stage, but maybe it shouldn't be shared. So at first, we then also made it a qualifier just because we wanted to test it out. So it was the Alive After 5. Then we had the sickest tricks, and that was just one trick at 4 apparatuses. So you have vault, wall, drop, and bars. And for most of those, it was just this one spot at first, and every athlete went through. And it was a really small elimination thing. I want to say if there was 16 of them, I think 14 got to move on, or 12 got to move on. It was a very small one, but it got that sickest trick kind of out of there. And then it also calmed people down a bit, because we were new to this, and it was a pro-am when we started this, which meaning anybody could show up and sign up. We kind of wanted those big trick people to get that out in a controlled area, instead of when everybody's watching the freestyle finals, they go for the big trick and they get hurt. So we kind of wanted that in its own separate shield of that was the point, and everybody's doing that. And then as we progressed there, and that's where the sickest tricks was, and it wasn't just one trick, you still had to be well-rounded. It now has evolved into its own category, and it's kind of like how skateboarding does its big air now, or motocross does it, or there's vert for skateboarding, there's street for skateboarding, now there's this big trick. So we kind of were thinking that this should be its own discipline, or also if somebody's doing that, they're not going to get deducted in the freestyle one, that they're separated enough in rules and in mentality that we think they should have their own separate space.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like that part of style has been pretty back and forth whether they should be included in the same thing or not.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I can speak on that, I think obviously the toughest thing for us is being able to include everybody with how they want to. We're renting out stadiums, and we're not an in-gym competition at the national level to where we have as much time as we want, or we have weeks of setting stuff up and practicing during, open hours or closed hours. We don't have any of that. We build on Friday. We're going Saturday, Sunday. We need to be out Sunday night. So we try as best as possible to find a way to accommodate the sport as the communities for that discipline are growing. So we hear all the time ideas from one person. I can't even fathom the number of how many people come to me with ideas at this event or before this event, just individually. But we kind of collect that data, and we also listen to, the big numbers from okay, like a bunch of people are asking for this. Okay, how do we actually implement that and it's credible? Because a lot of people also come to us and say, hey, you should judge like this. And when they say it, I'm like, in your dream world, that sounds awesome. Have you ever ran a competition with that? They're like, no. I'm like, you should go do that. And I'm not trying to be, off-putting. Go do that. Let me know how it goes, and I would love to hear more. But in your head, that sounds great. Things are normally not so great out of your head in the real world, so I'm the thing with the sickest tricks, it was like, we found a place for it to a degree, but it wasn't perfect. And now we think we're at a way better spot to where it's its own thing. It can draw its own crowd. Somebody can do that doesn't want to do the freestyle finals, doesn't want to do a live after 5, which those are more endurance performance style competition, where the sickest trick, you get 3 minutes on the course to yourself. You've already told the judges your 4 skills during warm-up, so they've already written it down, and they've already made a list of all the competitors, their skill, and the point system of the idea of how, this is the most points this person can get for that skill. This is the most they can get, and it's already been relayed. So then it's just on them to execute them well. It's not about, and they get to just do their 4 skills. They don't have to focus so much on connecting those 4 skills if they don't wish. They don't have to worry about the versatility in the sense of, like, I also have to do a floor tumbling thing, to the same degree. It's a little bit more calm. And I think, a lot of people, that helps accentuate their positives. So let's set that up to where they can do that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. As far as some of the kind of like, it feels like people maybe didn't understand the criteria well enough this year. Do you just want to like, is it just that it's a format that maybe athletes are not used to, or was that part of it, or can you just like speak on that more?
Sure. I mean, I think the best way for me to speak on it is to kind of let you know where the information was and for how long, and where I think the disconnect really kind of is in our sport with the, I guess, athletes and competition. This gameplay is the same gameplay that happened last year. A lot of the people, I don't want to say names that you're talking about were venting. They did the same gameplay last year. So they were there last year. The only thing that happened different this year is Sickest Tricks was its own thing. So besides that, it's the same exact gameplay. Half the judges were the same, even. So there's that. Number 2, half the people, more than half the people there, we did qualifiers before coming, which is the same gameplay. The rules are posted up on International Parkour Federation. Any post that we do of the comp or the event will say the rules in a breakdown, and then say for more specific rules, go to internationalparkourfederation.com. So the rules are there. Every round, the judges also released videos on their own personal accounts of them saying, this is how I'm going to judge flow. Feel free to message me if you have any questions that I didn't touch, because I'm just going to say the general here. And if you're at the actual event, you can ask me the questions, or you can message me personally, but I don't really want to get into a debate here with people that aren't even coming. So that's how we did it online for, a week leading up to it. Then at the event, we, before every group's allowed to start, we do a 20-minute warm-up on the course where we normally ask for the coach not to be there for that. We just want the athlete on the course, just warming up for 20 minutes. We don't say any rules. We don't say anything. This is for speed, freestyle, sickest trick, everything. We just want them to not feel like I need to start doing my hardest thing right now, or blah, blah, blah. How do I win this? It's more just warm up your body, get comfortable. After that 20 minutes, we bring them all in. That's where we ask if the coach wants to come. They should be there. And speed, it's, hey, I'm Robbie Corbett. here's your 3 judges. This is where the first judge's sector is. This part to this part. Here's the second judge. This part to this part. Here's the third judge. That part to that part. After I'm done walking you through the whole course, you have 30 minutes to continue to warm up, but you can go to each judge and ask them any specific questions you wish. And that's how we do speed. And so I walk them through and say, here's where you got to go in between this. And if you have any questions, no, cool. You keep moving, you go to this, and we go all the way through that. And then they get 30 minutes to literally now run the speed with the rules if they wish, and they could ask the judges any specific questions. We actually ask the coaches to normally ask the judge for the athlete, instead of if the athlete asks you, the coach, a question like, hey, can I do that? If you're not 100% positive, you should go ask the judge, because you might say something that's not actually true. So we even go to that degree. So that's just for speed. We do the exact same thing for sickest tricks, 20 minutes of warming up. Here's the rules. In this part of the rules, now you also need to go tell the judge the skill that you're going to do, that's going to be judging that apparatus. And they can tell you only if you give them skills and say, hey, is this skill worth more than this skill? You're not allowed to say or ask, is my skill worth more than that other guy's skill? Because we want you just to do the hardest tricks that you can do. We don't really want you to necessarily be like, oh, that guy said he's doing a Rudy. Well, what if I just do a Randy, even though, they haven't really done that before? So it's more about the coolest tricks you can do. And the judges are right there to answer them for 30 minutes. And then we do the same for freestyle. Actually, freestyle, a little bit different. I called everybody out on the course. We did the same warm-up. Then for the second speech, which is recorded, I just don't think the audio is that good, because we're talking about releasing it, but I don't think the audio is that good because it was just so loud in there. But I just started out with, hey, I'm Robbie Corbett. Thanks for coming here. Obviously, test everything with safety before you do it, in the sense of the course, if you haven't yet. And then the first thing I say is, if you have in your head what you want to do, this course has been up for 2 weeks online. If you've already said what you want to do, you got your performance in your head, the thing that you're going to watch, 10 years from now and be happy, do that. Do that thing. Just be safe. Now, if you want to win, here's the rules. Here's how it works. And I break down each judge in the broad term, which was already, on IPF for a year and a half, which was already in all those videos. I break it down to all of them, their coaches. And then I say, and here's the judge of that thing. If you have any more specific questions, ask them. And they have 30 minutes to do that. A lot of people complaining, I don't want to say names, but the biggest ones complaining, or at least they weren't necessarily complaining. The people in their comments were complaining, and the person that posted it didn't want to educate them, even though he knew how to. He didn't talk to he didn't talk to the versatility judge. He didn't go talk to him. And the biggest one that was complaining about it didn't go talk to the versatility judge at all. And then was not sure, why he didn't get 4 points, and he didn't do two things in versatility. He just didn't even attempt. So he still ranked really well too, and that was the big thing that we try to say is, well, look, man, you got really high without even attempting to get 4 points. So great job. And and as a judge and as the showrunner, we watch everybody's run. We record it and we go and watch it later and judge it. So we get the, a bit of the performance side of things. We're not just sitting there right there like, oh, fuck that up, mess that up. We want to, not be rushed in the judging. So it makes it a lot easier to go back, watch the tape and say, and now as for specifically with the criteria, okay, got a point for that, oh, no points for that, oh, miss. And it makes it a lot easier to where they're not so rushed. So anybody who didn't do a lot of the stuff on versatility as a viewer, I'm either thinking that's not their strong suit, or they just wanted to do what they wanted to do, and we gave them the stage to do that. Which I don't know any other sport that's like, hey, you're going to come play, this baseball game, but if you don't want to follow the rules, you can do whatever you want. I don't know, what you want to come on the, basketball court, come on, you can do whatever you want, but just if you want to, win, listen to the rules. I don't know any other sport that allows the athletes that kind of freedom to be not even a competitor at that point. I literally am like letting them just be a performer or an athlete. They don't even have to be a competitor if they don't want. So it's off. It's just miscommunication. And I don't think it's on our part not to be cocky or whatever. I don't think it's on our part. And I don't know how much better of a job we could have done. I think we try to do the best job we can. I think one thing that's definitely missing from the sport that all other sports have is coaches or managers for the athletes. That's really thinking for the athlete, what is best for this athlete, and gives them the hard talk of saying, your run's great, but you're missing these things. Do you want to win or not? And if they say, no, I don't, then the coach says, cool, you're probably not going to win. And that just happens all beforehand. Or a manager, saying the same thing. Because, every athlete that doesn't win is going to be bummed, and probably try to blame the judges or blame the event or the course or anything else that they can blame. And I don't fault them for that, but most sports would have that coach or manager who's there when they lose to tell them the truth and say, here's how you got to train if you want to win this thing. But probably you shouldn't bash this thing because it wasn't the thing's fault, or it wasn't 100% the event's fault. You got to take some self-responsibility.
Yeah, and I feel like the what you're saying with like having coaches and managers, like, yes, that's like, I would love to see that as well, to where every athlete who shows up has a manager or a coach or a team. I just feel like, the money in parkour needs to grow a little bit before we get to that point, just with everything being
I'm with you.
infancy.
Yeah, some people, when I've told them that, they're like, are you going to supply coaches? I'm like, that's not to, I mean, I wish I could, but that's not the federation's job, or responsibility. And in all honesty, you should find the person that you trust, like, more than us giving you somebody. You know what I mean? So there is a bit of confusion, I think, amongst the athletes or just the community about what we're supposed to do and what we're responsible for and what they're responsible for. And it's growing and evolving, and I think education's the key. But I also think, as these top level athletes stop competing, they'll probably start being coaches. So I think it's just a matter of time before that solution, evolution takes care of it, compared to a run to make it happen. Yeah. And it's like, I think the best version of that right now is just, you typically, if you're going to a competition, you're there with like at least a couple of your friends, and as far as like people you train with who know you well, I'm like, that could kind of like fill that role at the moment. It's like, if I'm at an event or a competition with like, like teammates of mine, etc., like, I'm gonna be on the course with them if I'm allowed to help. Like, it's just so helpful to have that second opinion from someone who knows your training style. I completely agree. I think there's still a gray zone there, though, where I've been talking to, because I spent all week, I got off, the week before the event, I'm working to make the event happen. The week after the event, I'm just calling everybody that was an athlete, a crew member, a judge, a potential new sponsor, a parent of a kid that, won. And I'm just asking their advice or telling them, how proud we are of them as them being representatives, now as us as champion, they're our champion, stuff like that. I'm also calling the ones that, I guess need to hear the hard truth, and I try to be respectful about it. But I think it's also best for some people, because, when I started the sport, there was no sport. I had to teach gymnastics to make a living because there was not even any other place. There was no parkour gym. There was no parkour competition. There was nothing when I started really doing it, and I had to go into the film industry to do it. And a lot of the film industry wasn't me doing parkour. It was me doing car hits or, hitting the concrete for stunts, things like that too. It wasn't just land on your feet and roll out. That would have been pretty dope. But, where we're kind of going with that is the kind of problem is it's not the correct way for it to keep evolving, because you say your team goes, but there was a team that showed up this year, and they were a team. They showed up wearing the same gym shirt, but they all wanted to win. So are they really giving you the best advice? Probably not, because they want to win. And I'm not saying that there was backstabbing. I'm not saying that it was malicious, but that's the point of a coach, is somebody that is looking out for everybody and telling you, here's your pros and cons and what you need to work on, and they're not on the floor also with them. The big thing that I'm more realizing that I think could be solved now is these athlete talking circles before and after the comp. And I'm not saying the athletes shouldn't talk to each other. That's not at all what I'm saying. But the problem is that there's not somebody from the outside perspective that's not on the course, that's not an athlete, there to give that perspective or that insight. So and what I mean by that is, a lot of people message me and say, hey, they message me and say, hey, I just hear a lot of athletes talking and this is what they're saying. And I'm like, well, is anybody there to say this, or this back? No. And it some people kind of speak about it, but it's like, no. And it's just, to me, I can tell that there's like the loudest people, which is fine. Then there's the more quiet people, and the more quiet people just let the louder person vent. But the problem with that is the one that's complaining is almost putting down the other people on their team, because the other people on their team won. So now the person complaining about the judging isn't fair and how he should have won now makes the people that won not feel like they should have won, even though they played the game, and they won. I'm not saying they're better than the other guy, every other day or at any other rules or whatever, but it's putting down your teammate when you put down the judging. It makes the people that won above you think they didn't deserve it. And that's not good for the community, for the team, the athletes, or anything. So there needs to be more talks. After the comp, we have all the judges there. Those athletes, a lot of them did not decide to go talk to the judges at all and be like, hey, why did I get what I get? Instead, they waited till it was over and then and then got in their circle, and that's just where the negativity grew. So it's not something that USA Parkour can necessarily solve. It's also got to be, there's got to be responsibility on their end to come talk to us, so it can be chatted about, or an intermediary that's trying to do that, so this communication is open and it is fair. Because a lot of people online that are complaining, they've never been to our event. So a lot of people are like, how did you not win? I don't get it. It's like, well, have you ever been to one of our competitions? No. Have you gone to IPF and checked the rules? No. Well, why should you know how he won? You know what I mean? Like, it's, it's just, that's the way it is right now. It's these elite kind of people are talking very loud, and they're the ones getting heard. And so many people underneath are just like, whatever, I don't agree with that, but whatever. And that's just kind of where it is, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why I'm doing this right now is I believe pretty strongly in trying to have those open dialogues to help make the product that is the parkour industry better and better, because it's probably the one thing I'm most passionate about. So I just want that entire thing to keep growing in a positive manner, and so I think that having those open discussions and having more avenues for explanation and growth and understanding to occur. So I think that's kind of like where my whole thing is.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk to you. I mean, I remember meeting you, and you were mainly an athlete, taking the certification that, how many years ago was that?
It was 2012.
Jeez.
Yeah, so...
I was going to say 6 years ago, but Jesus. So 8 years ago, and I remember you guys being like, we're opening a gym, and I was like, that's awesome, because I think at that point, we had maybe done 5 certifications, and I want to say... there wasn't many parkour gyms to do them at across the U.S. And it was pretty hard for us to find a gym. And actually, I think the one that you showed up to was technically a gymnastics gym in the process of building their parkour gym. So we actually even did it outside in their grass with their parkour equipment, because the gym wasn't ready for the equipment yet.
Yeah, it was a gymnastics gym in Coeur d'Alene, which is like 2.5 hours from where I live.
And to see how you guys literally loaded up your car with the foam that they were tossing out, still great foam, and set up your guys' whole gym, and seeing the way of where you started to where you are now, and how you've segued from not just being the free runner guy, but the gym owner as well as the marketer, as well as the leader. It took you 8 years, and you're still growing, and it's still great. So I mean, that's one reason I was very interested to talk to you, because I felt like you weren't coming to me with just opinions. You were coming from a credible perspective of have done, not done, and stuff like that. And a way to see, I feel like you're one of those that looks like this will be better in 5 years. It's not going to start great. It's going to be, I got to start, and in 5 years, it's going to be probably where I want it to be now, that kind of thing. So, so just wanted to say that. I mean, honestly, I think the event every year has got tremendously better. Our numbers have grown great in the 3 years. The qualifiers have grown as the right gyms come on board. Participation from different demographics has upped. Our kids have really upped, which is great because that's obviously the future, and that's the parents seeing a reason to invest and fly out and have their kid do this thing. So that's really been great because I think our first few comps, it was really bare bones with kids and parents. It was really bare bones, and it's kind of almost switched, which is great. That's
as far as like it was mostly youth athletes.
It was mostly the 16 and up for the first few comps because they could just fly themselves. They'd all buy Airbnbs together or hotels together and bunk, or they knew somebody they could crash at, and a lot of parents just didn't quite see. They were looking at it more as a hobby that their kid did. They didn't really look at it as a credible sport that had a path for growth and whatnot, to where I think that's definitely been changing. And that changes also because, I think our competition is a grassroots competition that starts in a grassroots gym. And then those people win and they get to come and they get to see that like path. But obviously I would like more of our World Parkour Championship style things because that was normally we took from the national, the top 10, and we went to a more urban environment or more authentic to the sport of like the street feel. And we were able to push obviously a little bit harder there in the sense of the skills or the course design. So you got to see that top 10%, getting pushed. And I'd also like it to be, for us at the USA Parkour Cup, I think if more people just really invested in trying to partake in the qualifier, that money directly goes to the cup. So if you skip the qualifier and come to the cup, are you paying a little bit more? Sure, but you also didn't help that grassroots part, and that just trickles up. Number two, maybe anybody, the big people I spoke to that weren't, confident about the judging or the things like that, I recommended maybe they judge a comp. So I would like to maybe see that they judge a qualifier, and if so, if it goes well, maybe they come judge the national. And that was what I proposed that way, to like, why don't you just try to see it from this other side's perspective, and then maybe your opinion will change. If not, whatever. The other big thing, I guess, evolving as far as the gameplay or how to work with the certain new perspective of how people feel is, I haven't found the name for it yet, but we're looking to maybe have the freestyles favorite, which is just the people in the freestyle finals get to vote on who they thought had the best performance. So there's no judging criteria, there is no judges. It's just you were voted this award amongst your peers of just, we think you had the best performance, all rules aside kind of thing. And it's almost like an Academy Award thing. It's just amongst your peers. They thought for whatever reason that was the best performance. And I think that will help these people that come and don't really look into the rules and then aren't sure. It'll at least, maybe they'll have that chance to win, or the voting will show that maybe they shouldn't have won,
Right.
Yeah, and then it's not so much on us. It's like there's a way to solve this discrepancy that's fair, I think. So we're going to try that. So that'll be a new big addition. Obviously, the course hopefully evolves, grows, gets bigger, and one day we're not just doing this once a year. We're doing hopefully, nationals, but we're doing like biannual. So we're doing 2 a year, and one's on, more the West Coast, the other's on the East Coast. So it's easier for people to get to.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of growth is always, slow. It takes money. It's hard. And so, like, especially, like, more events.
Yeah. Well, the more events, the more you have to educate, and the more the people at the event have to be educated. I know some people are like, I talked to a judge, and he said that he thought this thing was going on. I was like, cool. I mean, it's not, but... he just told you he thought, so he didn't want to say yes or no because he wasn't sure. So that's at every event. We had, a few qualifiers that, like I said, we said, hey, please do 2 rounds of speed if you can, but they just made the time blocks for their employees that they could pay. And when the numbers finally show up, because a lot of, parkour community don't like to pre-register, they like to just show up. It made it really tough for that event to then say, we can't do 2 runs with all these people. I'm paying all my employees and they got to go, so we're doing 1 run, or instead of it being a 90-second run, it's a 45-second run for freestyle. So, that's the whole thing. I think, those little things are going to help. Obviously, time helps all. And And for all I know, it could be completely different next year. I mean, the sponsor that came on this year came on pretty last minute, but it helped a lot to make the sport look more credible to other sports sponsors. And that's one thing I think a lot of athletes don't think about. You know, they want their own brand all over themselves, but that's not going to really help the event get a sponsor. And you got to think big picture, which I'm not saying is easy for an individual to think. So I know there's always this kind of like, man, I want to be able to wear whatever I want to wear. And it's like, well, number one, we can't do that anyways, even without a sponsor. If you got like profanity on your shirt or, you know, I don't know, you want to run the course without clothes on, we're not doing that. Because we're still trying to obviously have, you know, the kids be a part of it, the parents be a part of it, and it be a thing for all audiences to watch and start to gain interest. So it brings in that, you know, world eye. So hopefully, you know, this sponsor that we just worked with seems very thrilled, very happy. We're obviously talking about doing bigger things in the future. So potentially, you know, the growth could be astronomical. The most where I'd like to see the growth would just be from those people in the community that, you know, claim to be the leader and the, you know, the influencer, just probably not talk negative about any event that's going on. You know, obviously if there's safety reasons or something, obviously do that. But like, don't talk bad on anybody's event, because it makes that event seem less. In every event right now we need, because every event's trying to help its you know, it's trying to do its best to help what it thinks the sport needs based on who's around it, you know, and where they think the sport should go. So, I mean, the idea would hopefully be just to say, hey, that thing's cool. I don't, you know, it's not for me, but it's cool, you know, or not bash somebody else's thing just because it's not, you know, whatever the reason is. You know, there's obviously a lot of disinformation out there. I know there's a lot of athletes that are sponsored behind the scenes by certain things, and it's in their best interest to talk negative about other things because they want their thing to succeed. And if you do that, it discredits kind of everything. You know, it makes a lot of negativity be in the community, and that's really easy for an outside influence then, i.e. FIG, to come in and say, hey, this sport is confused, doesn't know what it's doing. We're going to help them. They need our guidance. You know, they're fighting amongst themselves. We can help bring them together. And that's, you know, that's the big thing that I don't think a lot of people get when they, you know, like I would never bash somebody else's event just because they don't do what we do. You know, at IPF, our rules and our gameplay are posted publicly and anybody's allowed to use them. I don't know if the other events do that, the other gameplays. I don't know if they've, you know, it's their thing or whatnot. I mean, I don't think you're allowed to trademark rules like that. I think it's too general. But I don't know how, you know, some people definitely come up to me all the time like, why don't you do your comp like this comp? And it's like, well, one, I don't think they want me to do that. And then two, then everybody's doing the same thing. And what about people who aren't good at that thing? Are they don't have this outlet? So it's just kind of that bigger way of thinking that I don't feel like USA Parkour hopefully isn't competing with anybody else. I want them all to succeed, because I think as an athlete, you know, the best gameplay for me probably wouldn't have been USA Parkour's. In the sense of freestyle, it would have been probably Sickest Tricks, because that's just what and I'm not saying nowadays I would get murdered. Easily, I would actually probably just kill myself trying to do that stuff still to that degree. But, you know, like that's what was my strength if I didn't want to go against my weaknesses. Or it might have been even Art of Motion, because Art of Motion, like, it really depends on who the judge is. I mean, every year if the judge changed, it would be a different category of flow. Depends on what that judge sees as flow, or what that other judge sees as creativity. And that's really tough because you're no longer playing to the course or yourself, you're playing to that judge. And then obviously if the course changes and the judge changes, it's just really hard to really kind of figure out, how do I win this strategically if my goal is to win? And nothing against that. Like when I did Art of Motion, I did not show up wanting to win. I just showed up wanting to be on the stage. I definitely knew I was not winning, and was A-okay with that.
Yeah, sweet. Well, cool. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say, put in, but I feel like that covers a lot of maybe what people have been talking about.
Yeah. No, I think that's kind of it for that. I mean, as for the whole event, I thought it was definitely a success. Get messages every day from people saying that it was the most fun they've ever had, or they can't wait for next year, or the kids say that their parents are stoked with them and stuff. So, I just don't want that to go under the rug. It's been astronomically better. So, the USA Parkour team definitely feels like everything was better. I think next year the course will be better because we're going to work with a different equipment provider. And I think, the big thing is just kind of, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but just feel free to reach out to WFPF or USA Parkour if you want questions, or if you have questions, or if you don't, you just want to talk. We're down to listen to anybody. I'm not saying that we're the best or can just automatically implement stuff, because it's a process always. But, we're down. It's not trying to be we don't want to hear what other people think. We definitely understand that it's going to evolve and grow. And we hope all the people that watch it, participate, just know that every year we're trying to get better. And we want to work with the competitors, with the community, not against.
Cool.
Yeah,
well, thanks for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, sweet.